Hello and welcome to this edition of Temple Street,
the magazine show brought to you by the Department of Communication and Journalism at Suffolk University. I'm Elaine Pulo.
And I'm Justin Oades. In today's show, we'll visit the annual Boston Vegetarian Festival. We'll talk to a Suffolk student about his experience in the United States Marine Corps.
We'll meet 3 Suffolk professors who are also filmmakers and find out what people around town think about the latest advances in social networking.
But first, let's take a look at an exciting new sailing program in Boston especially designed for disabled people.
Victoria Costa-Rubio and Jennifer Martinez have the story.
That's like a millionaire.
Charlie Croteau says he feels like a rich man. A paraplegic for over 20 years, he just learned how to sail and loves it.
It's kind of like a premium program in life. You just, you have other people that help you out doing things, and you get to go out and play with the boat, and then you come back and the work of putting it away is done by somebody else.
Croteau's talking about the adaptive sailing program at Pierce Park, a program that teaches those with disabilities that they can do just about anything, and that means testing the waters in a different way.
And they just treated you like anybody else. They didn't make a big deal out of disability at all. With me, my hands don't really work, so we were able to, work around all the little problems.
The gloves create an artificial grip for Croteau. His chair allows him to slide to each side of the boat, and just like that, he's off sailing. Pierce Park Sailing Center has the only fully handicapped accessible sailing dock in the Boston Harbor. The center has about 340 regulars, many of which have competed in regattas all over the country and in the Olympic trials. But what makes this program truly unique is that they don't only teach disabled sailing, they live it. Coordinator of the program, Maureen McKinnon Tucker, is the first woman in history to become a Paralympics gold medalist.
I think as a society, we have a real problem with limiting and believing that people can do things, that people can't do things, simply because they haven't seen it done.
McKinnon Tucker has been coordinator of the program for 3 years. She sailed for many years before she became disabled, but it wasn't until she lost the ability to walk that she began to compete.
Sailing is one of the best sports for the disabled because it is so empowering, because it's a sport we don't need the lower half of our bodies to do, and we also can do it as a team. We can all sail together and focus on our strengths rather than our weaknesses.
And those that are blind don't fall behind. They have specialized software and radio equipment to assist visually impaired people navigate aboard. Board of Directors member Jim Donahue is a single-leg amputee and Vietnam vet. He's now teaching a man who cannot move any part of his body, currently on a respirator, how to sail. Donahue says there is special equipment at Pierce Park for any type of disability.
If you've seen someone in a wheelchair, they have a tube in their mouth and they sip and puff and blow in it, and it steers their wheelchair. We're adapting one of those to a sailboat.
It's called a sip and puff system. It's the 7th in the country, now available at Pierce Park. Donahue says he loves his job and that it is very rewarding to see people overcome their obstacles on a daily basis.
Because they feel so empowered. They're not in a wheelchair. There's something that they can do other than watch television or sit at a computer. They can come sailing. And that's worth every dime of it.
McKinnon Tucker says the number of participants has increased yearly. Disabled children alone increased by 88% this year.
That I keep getting telephone calls from people all around the country and the world. I've had even calls from South America asking me for advice on how to start a disabled program, how to run it, what kind of equipment to use, how do you teach the teachers.
The adaptive sailing program here at Pierce Park closes every year at the end of October. The season will start again April 2010.
Who needs them? Legs.
Who needs them?
Legs. Who
It's
needs
just
them?
dead weight.
Don't need them when you sail.
Victoria Costa-Rubio for Temple Street.
Thanks, Victoria and Jennifer. For more information on Pierce Park, visit www.pierceparksailing.org.
On Halloween weekend, not everyone was into junk food and candy, as nearly 15,000 healthy eaters attended Boston's Vegetarian Food Festival, hosted at the Reggie Lewis Athletic Center. Nicole Lee and Scott Largay have more.
Hungry crowds flocked to Boston's 14th annual Vegetarian Food Festival, sponsored by the Boston Vegetarian Society. The eco-friendly festival not only featured great food, but was also an opportunity for vegetarians and non-vegetarians to learn some of the potential risks of eating meat. The festival has been so popular in the past that this year it has been extended to 2 days. Board member of the Boston Vegetarian Society, Beverly Rich, says this year's festival shows more of a wide variety of vendors, which brings in new faces and new ideas.
This is our biggest event and our most special event, and we try to get the word out that there's wonderful vegetarian food that's available to anyone who wants to try it, and you don't have to deprive yourself to be on a vegetarian diet.
The festival also featured special guest speakers who talked about the health benefits of a vegetarian diet. First-time speaker, physicist and Yale University graduate Noam Moore spoke about how being vegetarian can even prevent global warming.
A lot of people are not aware that recent research shows animal agriculture is one of the biggest contributors to global warming that exist. It's far bigger a contributor than all the cars and buses and planes and trucks and trains all put together. It has an enormous impact on our planet. And so it's also a big way we can do something to make a difference.
Internationally recognized Dr. Michael Greger, who wrote the book Carbophobia, The Scary Truth Behind America's Low-Carb Craze, returned to speak at this year's festival and successfully engage the audience with his well-known interactive quiz games.
People are vegetarian, eat vegetarian for a number of reasons, for the environment, for the animals, but as a physician, my bias towards humans' health. And one looks at the top killers here in the United States: heart disease, cancer, stroke, also diabetes and obesity. These are diseases that can not only be stopped, but literally reversed with a plant-based diet. So eating vegetarian, the only diet ever shown to actually reverse disease, open up the arteries, dissolve the plaque. #1 killer every single year for the last 70 years of both men and women in this country.
But one of the main reasons people go vegetarian is for the sake of animal rights. Helen Rayshik, coordinator for the Massachusetts Animal Rights Coalition, says the organization continues to work actively to help cease the suffering animals from all over the state endure.
We work legislatively and testify on bills that are animal friendly. We do tabling, we do demonstrations and rallies, we do protests.
Visitors were offered a wide variety of foods from over 60 vendors showcasing their produce at the festival. Macro Mediterranean, a vegan meal delivery service, started off in owner Jeremy Abril Thomas's kitchen, but has now grown to cater all around Massachusetts.
Meal delivery service designed to create an affordable way for people to get healthy, traditional quality home-cooked meals on a regular basis, or often enough so that they know what it feels like to eat that way consistently.
A popular stall at this year's festival, Vegan Treats, brought a wide assortment of mouth-watering yet healthy desserts, which are just as delicious as they look. With Boston's vegetarian population increasing, organizers say they have no doubt that next year's festival will be a successful one. For Temple Street, this is Nicole Lee.
To find out more about Boston events sponsored by Boston's Vegetarian Society, visit www.bostonveg.org.
Do you think social networking sites like Twitter and Facebook are bringing us closer or pushing us farther apart? Ron Campbell and Dan Leahy went out to the streets to find out.
Facebook is definitely the best. It's because you can keep in touch with your friends back home, or across the country, across the world, anywhere. And you can keep in touch there, so it's not awkward when you get back together in a couple months, a year or two. I like it.
Well, I have to say most of the people I'm friends with on Facebook I don't actually talk to, so I don't really use it that much. And I don't really like it because I feel like it's kind of fake almost. People talk to you on Facebook that you would never talk to in person, so I don't really like it.
I find that on the one hand, it's kind of true that, there's not as much personal interaction. But I think for good friends, people who pretty much know each other, it's a great way to make more personal interaction. So for example, it's easier for me to send out on Twitter, saying I'm going to this movie tonight and I want to go see something, and have like everyone come. So for good friends who like know each other and people who are kind of already connected, I think it's a great way to kind of build on those relationships.
People with long distance relationships, people who live far away. I think it is, you know, an easier way to communicate with people. You know, some people abuse it, but I think it's a good thing.
In all honesty, they're probably pulling us farther apart. I mean, if you can get everything out you want to say without actually having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, why would you bother, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think people just, like, they take time and put Facebook posting or Twitter posting, but they don't have to call anybody on the phone, or you don't have to go visit them. It's like the people in the periphery of your life kind of stay more in tune with you, but you don't see them as much.
I think they're good as long as people actually realise that other people have other ways of communicating, because if it becomes the only way to communicate, I think that's rather sad. And
there is life outside of Facebook.
You've found out once or twice that friends have forgotten to pick up the phone and just say, you know, hi, you know, this is going on or something, and so you depend on.
I would agree with that. It's a means of communication, not the means of communication.
I personally like Facebook and Twitter.
I'm tweeting right now.
Move over, Hollywood. Here comes Suffolk University. This year, 3 professors from the Communication and Journalism Department are not only teaching about films, but also making them.
On this week's Spotlight on Suffolk, Elaine and I take a closer look at the professors in the director's chair. Here's a story.
10 years ago, Dr. Nina Hunteman, a professor of media in the Communication and Journalism Department, made her first film for the Media Education Foundation, entitled Game Over: Gender, Race, and Violence in Video Games. Hunteman, whose research focuses on gaming culture, is now in the process of producing an updated version of her movie.
The film looks a bit dated now. The most recent game in that original film was for the PlayStation. So much has changed in the industry in the past 10 years. It's moved from being sort of marginally part of popular culture to being the driving force of popular culture.
Fortunately for Hunteman, she's working on Game Over 2 as a professor at Suffolk, and says both the university and the students have been a great resource for her during the shooting and editing of the film.
I use Suffolk students to shoot my interviews. I've used Suffolk students to play games for me, to get B-roll, and the department's been really helpful in giving me time off. I'm on sabbatical to edit my film, so this film would not have been possible if it weren't for the resources at Suffolk.
Hunteman isn't the only Suffolk professor with a filmmaking bug. Dr. Gerald Peary, a film professor and film critic for over 30 years, most recently for the Boston Phoenix, just finished his film, For the Love of Movies, the Story of American Film Criticism. In his directorial debut, Peary used his experience as film critic to chronicle the history of film criticism. The curious, reflexive role of the critic-turned-director gives the movie an added quality other critics are raving about.
It's a documentary about my profession, about people who are film critics. So it's interviews with lots of famous film critics who are working in the United States. And it is also a history of film criticism.
Peary's film opened this summer to positive reviews and has been presented in festivals around the world, including Jerusalem, Montreal, Hong Kong, and many other major cities. Just like Hunteman, Peary says he is thankful for the support of the university and the Department of Communication.
My editing suite is my office at Suffolk. If you came in anywhere in the last 3 years, you'd see people, editing away. Some of the professors in my department are also the voices in the film. We have sort of voices of dead film critics. They're not around, so I have people doing them. Like this guy Jason Carter. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Suffolk professor and media lab director Jason Carter, and yes, we have heard of him, has made many short films in the past, but this time around he had the unique idea, turning the production of his film Showville into a class.
I figured why not kind of jump on board where I will act as the director. So this is pretty much all student produced besides myself and my partner. Students have done every other production role. From lighting, cameras, audio, craft service, PA, producer.
Along with the several behind-the-scene jobs, Carter gave students another exciting opportunity to be involved with his film.
The main cast are professionals, so that's been great. But there are so many roles that ended up having a lot of students fill those roles in the film. I think it really helps bind the students to the film in a way that, yes, they were crew and they'll see their name in the credits, but they're also up there on screen. I think that's a lot of fun.
If you prefer green, I can make it happen.
No, it's cool. I mean, it's all for the same cause, right?
A real team player. I'll be sure to mention it to the mayor.
Really?
Get out of here!
And cut. Reporting for Temple Street, I'm Elaine Pulo.
For the Love of Movies is in theaters now. Look for Showville and Game Over 2 at the beginning of next year.
And up next, Lauren Murphy talks to a Suffolk student about life in the military, and Nicole Fabricius tells us about an exhibit at the Museum of Science.
Don't go away. It's all coming up right after the break, only on Temple Street.
Explore new worlds. Read. Visit literacy.gov.
Every year, mothers lose their babies to gun crimes. You'll always be your mother's baby. So before you commit a gun crime, think about who you'll leave behind. Gun crimes hit home.
With Veterans Day just passing, Lauren Murphy got a chance to sit down and speak with Suffolk's own veteran, Andrew Del Rossi, about his experience in Iraq.
Hi, Andrew, and welcome to Temple Street. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Anytime.
I wanted to start off by asking you what the reserves were and what some of the benefits are of joining.
The reserves is basically, obviously we know it's the military, it's a different element of the military. If you go to join the Army or the Marine Corps, every branch has their own reserve unit. But if my experience with the Marine Corps is you could either be active duty, which means you sign up and you go 4 years, that's a contract, 4 years, or you could do 6 years, or you could be a reservist. You have to qualify to be a reservist. You have to be enrolled in a college or have a full-time job, something going on for you back home, or else there would be no point to be a reservist because you would just go straight active duty. As a reservist, you train once a month with a unit that's in your home state or the next state over, and you do 2 weeks out of the year. But as that part of that contract, your enlistment is 6 years, and you can be deployed to anywhere around the world whenever they ask.
So you just got back from Iraq a few months ago. Tell me a little bit about that and what an average day over there consisted of.
We had many missions in Iraq. An average day is most likely we were just maintaining a presence patrol, letting people know that U.S. troops were still in their country and they still cared and they still had a part. Average day would basically be patrolling through a city, a mounted patrol, which just means you're in vehicles the entire time. There's mounted patrols and there's foot patrols. We did mostly mounted patrols because the Iraqi army was doing foot patrols. They took over everything since the beginning of the war, and finally when I got there in 2008, they were mostly doing all the missions and stuff like that. So we did mounted patrols every day, maintained a presence, let the village people know that we were still there and we still cared about them.
So you were in contact with the population over there and the culture and everything?
Yeah, every single day.
What was that like?
It depends. Geography-wise, there's the people who don't like you that much, and then there's the people that love you. Where I was at the time, the people loved us. They invited us in for dinner, drinks every single day. They went out of their way to make sure they said hi to us, thanking us, that kind of things, and we gave back to them as well. We did a lot of security for school openings for kids in their school. We did security for what we called was a med cap, which means we set up free dental stations and free medical stations for the Iraqis who didn't have that much.
That's really amazing that you did all of that. Before you went over there, you had opinions obviously based on media coverage and stories that you had heard of the Iraqis. How did your opinion change based on before you were over there to now that you've experienced everything over there firsthand?
Well, it's different. The TV feeds you something different, but as a Marine, you're taught to fight, you're taught to kill, you're taught to no matter what, doesn't matter what everyone else thinks, what you're told you do. So really in the back of my mind, I was thinking about Iraq and I was thinking about, there are possible terrorists there are insurgents, that kind of thing. But the Marine Corps made me delete any type of thought I had in my head of any kindness or any type of politics. I was a Marine. I do what I told no matter what the circumstances were. So I went over there looking for a fight. But really, in some cases, I found some Iraqis that were willing to, step up for their country, willing to take care of themselves, and willing to do whatever it takes to get their country back and to be able to get the responsibility of being what it meant to be an Iraqi to them. And I went from being, a hard charger, looking for a fight, to wanting to do whatever I could to help these people.
What is your most memorable moment that you had over there?
The most memorable was, like I said, I went over there looking for a fight. I mean, that's a Marine, that's why we joined. I was in the infantry, but I realized that my mission became, instead of hunting down insurgents and al-Qaeda operatives, it was more of a humanitarian mission. And the first village I went into, these people weren't looking to fight. They were hungry and they were starving. And I would see this one kid every day, and I'd give him water, food, and one day I gave him my watch that I had. And I didn't think it was anything, but the most memorable moment is him following my Humvee out on a bicycle and blowing me kisses as I left the village. And I realized that, to their culture, blowing a kiss to another male is very, it's very extremely respectful, and it means a lot. It's not just, no one around here blows another guy a kiss. Over there, it's a big deal. It's one of the greatest forms of respect, especially for another, kid to an American.
That's a very touching story. Can you give us an example of a difficult time that you went through while you were over there?
I mean, there's difficult times all the time, especially if you're an infantryman. Almost every day is difficult, but I mean, the hardest is knowing that an American soldier or another Marine obviously is hurt or killed. The worst part is seeing medevacs fly over your head to go rescue someone that's either dying or bleeding out, and you know what's happening at that exact moment, and there's nothing you can do except hope he pulls through. That's the worst part, is watching the toll of American death go up while you're over there.
How do you deal with criticism of people that are not supportive of the war and don't support you being a Marine over there fighting for your country?
It's mixed. Back in 2003, I can understand there was a lot of people that were for the war. There was, including Congress, agreed to let Bush send troops there. When people say, "Oh yeah, I support the troops, but I don't support the war," I think they're confused, because basically you're saying to an American Marine or a soldier, "Oh yeah, I support you. I just don't support anything you do." I mean, that's really not motivating at all. I think that in 2003, if you were a person who said that they didn't agree with the Iraq War, I think that you had the right state of mind. I mean, even me as a Marine, I thought it was questionable invading Iraq, but we've been there for almost 7 years, and I mean, how long are you going to fight it for? You're either with us or you're not, because you might as well, if you support the Marines, "Oh, I support the Marines," then support the mission too, until we get out of there, because we've been, it doesn't matter if we went, we were there, we're there for 7 years, so back us, that's it. Back the mission, and then, hope for us to get out of there as soon as possible.
So you had told me previous to the interview that you have the possibility of going over there for a second tour. How do you feel about going back over there again and kind of dropping school and everything that is at home like you did before again?
If they did ask me to go and they needed me to go, I'd go in a heartbeat, because that's what I joined for. When I signed the contract back in 2005, I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew I could leave at a drop of a hat. As far as going back to Iraq, Iraq's pretty much over. When I was there, they were shutting down bases, they were sending troops home. So the next time I'll be deployed will definitely be Afghanistan, and I want that mission more than ever. That's the war I want.
Why do you want that so badly?
Because this was the start of all of it. Afghanistan, that's where the Taliban's based, the Taliban who supported al-Qaeda, 9/11, 3,000 Americans dead in one day. That's where it should be, and that's where I think the fight should be, and I think that's where we need to start eliminating every one of those guys that claims they're Taliban or al-Qaeda.
That's really impressive. Everything that you've done over there is very
Thank you.
touching, and we all appreciate it a lot here at home. Thank you very much, Andrew, for coming in and answering all of my questions today. I'm sure you've inspired somebody else to join.
Thank
Back
you.
to the studio.
Thanks, Lauren, and a special thanks to Andrew Del Rossi for joining us on Temple Street.
Forget platform 9 3/4. Now you can just take the Green Line to visit Hogwarts. In this week's Critics Corner segment, Nicole Fabricius takes us to the new Harry Potter exhibit at the Museum of Science. Nicole?
Thanks, Justin. If you need to escape the real world, movies are a sure gateway to the world of fantasy. And judging by the sheer global obsession of over 400 million people, the world of Harry Potter is a preferred fantasy land. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series has drawn in children and adults alike, creating quite a phenomenon all over the world. Even if you haven't read the books or seen the movies, you must have some respect for the wizard, because he's not going anywhere. In fact, he's now taking over Boston. The Museum of Science has transformed one of their big exhibit halls into the world of Hogwarts in the streets of London. The exhibit is touring the United States and is already generating great interest. Now, I don't think Harry Potter has quite reached the convention status of the Trekkies, but with the last movie breaking the record of Spider-Man in opening night alone, it's definitely on its way. Before I even got into the exhibit hall, I spotted young and old donning their glasses, long black robes, and wands in anticipation to see their favorite movies come to life. Upon entering the exhibit, we were greeted by a wizard with a British accent who introduced us to the infamous sorting hat. If you don't remember what that sorting hat does, here's a clip to remind you.
Hermione Granger?
Oh no. Okay, relax. Mental, that one. I'm telling you.
Right then. Right. Okay. Gryffindor!
Of course, that's not how we get to choose dorms here at Suffolk, but you do get a chance to put on the hat and let it pick which Hogwarts hall you belong in. Each section of the exhibit is presented in its own environment, including Hagrid's hut, the Gryffindor common room, the Forbidden Forest, and even the Great Hall, complete with floating candles falling from its ceiling. I was especially impressed with the attention to detail in the costumes and the props. It was truly amazing. Nothing was looked over. The exhibit is even staffed by real-life Brits and local actors who answer questions with their proper British accents, just to complete the atmosphere. But just looking at the stuff from movies can't satisfy anybody, so there are a few interactive spots throughout the exhibit. Visit the herbology classroom and you can pull your own mandrake, like in this scene from the Chamber of Secrets.
Grasp your mandrake firmly. You pull it sharply out of the pot.
You can also play a little Quidditch, feet on the ground of course, as flying around on broomsticks is strictly forbidden. And if you like a low-impact activity, you can just sit in Hagrid's giant chair. I highly recommend checking this exhibit out. Even if you're not a Harry Potter fan, you'll still appreciate the craftsmanship and hard work that went into the production of this movie. And as for you Wizard fans, you definitely shouldn't miss this. I was ready to see it again as soon as I left. The exhibit runs through February 21st, and admission is $26. But it also includes a pass to the museum itself, and it's good for 6 months. Tickets can be purchased online at mos.org or at the museum box office. And a final warning, at the exit, of course, you will find yourself magically in the gift shop, where you can fulfill any of your Harry Potter needs. Try grabbing one of the wands off a shelf and swish it around for some cash to pay for your expensive chocolate frogs or a Gryffindor tie like mine.
Thanks, Nicole. I'll be sure to grab my dress robes and head on over.
Grab your wand, too.
Thank you, Nicole. That sounds like a great exhibit. Well, that wraps up our show. I'm Elaine Pulo.
And I'm Nicole Fabricius.
And I'm Justin Oades. See you next time on Temple Street.